Okay, good morning. I will go ahead and call to order the Wednesday, January 22nd regular meeting of the County of Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District, Sacramento Area Sewer District, and Sacramento County Sanitation District Financing Authority. And please ask for a roll call.
Good morning. Director Bruins?
Present.
Carr? Frost?
Here.
Harris? Aquino?
Here.
Kennedy?
Here.
Lee?
Here.
McGarvey?
Here.
Nottoli?
Here.
Orozco? Peters?
Here.
Serna? Villegas?
Here.
Morin? Hume?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you. Now, if you wouldn't mind reading the Metro Cable replay statement.
This meeting of the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation and Sacramento Area Sewer Districts is being recorded and will be broadcast on Sunday, January 26th at 6 p.m. on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on the Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse cable systems. The meeting is closed captioned for our hearing impaired viewers. In accordance with Government Code 54952.3, compensation for meetings of these legislative bodies is required to be verbally disclosed. The amount of $100 will be paid for each member participating today as a member of the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District, and the amount of $100 will be paid for each board member participating today as a member of the Sacramento Area Sewer District. Compensation for Sacramento County supervisors and City of Sacramento council members is paid to the county and city respectively to partially offset the costs of those governments. Compensation for other board members is delivered to the individuals. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker identification form located at the back of chambers and hand it to the clerk. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Please silence your electronic devices at this time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And welcome to Director Aquino. If you wouldn't mind, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Director Harris.
Madam Clerk, I didn't hear my name called. I just wanted to let you know I'm here.
I'm
Director
so sorry.
Harris.
I missed your name.
She did
Director
call it,
Harris.
and I didn't hear you affirm that you were here, and I thought it was odd, and I looked down to make sure you were here, in which case you are.
I'm
so.
pretty sure I made it.
Okay. Time will tell. Moving on to item number 1, please.
Acting as your Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District and Sacramento Area Sewer District separate matters, election of chair and vice chair for the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District and the Sacramento Area Sewer District.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. First of all, Happy New Year. It's first meeting, although it's been at least about 3 weeks now. The first meeting every year, the chair and the vice chair positions switch, and the vice chair typically becomes the chair, and the new vice chair member is elected for the boards. As it has been historically done, it goes between the county board members and the city board members. So this year, in a minute or two, Director Hume or Chair Hume's term will come to an end. Thank you for the service. And the tradition holds, which I think you need to vote on, with Director Frost will become the chair. In the rotation, we will have Folsom is the next up for the vice chair position. Carrie Howell, I spoke with to make sure that she is up for it, and she said yes enthusiastically. And unfortunately, she was out of town. But she expressed interest in assuming the vice chair position. So a recommendation would be to have Director Frost to become the chair and Director Howell to be the vice chair for the next year. That would be the recommendation.
Do I have a motion in that regard?
So moved. Can we do both?
Motion by Director Bruins, second by Director Villegas. I just want to say it's been the best of times. It was the worst of times. I will cherish this. No, I'm just kidding. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Yeah, that's right. I want to thank my mom, thank the members of the Academy. And with that, I'll scoot back. You can scoot over.
We do not. I have this also.
Oh, you got all the
Get a 5-minute
timing
recess
stuff
or
too.
something. Oh, you're going to stay there?
Okay. Then I'll pass that over.
Okay, thank you, sir.
No,
No, we're staying in our,
not moving.
okay, the chair, yeah.
So organized.
I feel so
many countries,
naked right
we
now
do the
without that little
transition very
placard
simply.
in front of me.
I want to thank everyone for allowing me to serve as chair this year. I'm looking forward to it. And with that, we'll get right down to business and move on to the next item, please.
Acting as your Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District and Sacramento Area Sewer District, District Separate Matters, verbal update on subcommittee proceedings.
As you recall, about a year and a half ago or so, that we initiated a number of studies, and we also asked for a subcommittee to be formed. And we had one meeting last month. It was December, I believe, 13th, the only meeting that we had. In that meeting, we discussed the highlights of the report that was prepared by our consultant related to the staffing services. If you remember, there was two questions that were asked in that: whether the district should continue to receive its staff from the county or should it have its own staff. So we just reviewed the highlights. And the members asked a number of questions and suggested that we develop some guiding principles to further the discussion. So at the next meeting, which we will hold in February, end of February, February 26th to be specific, we'll bring those guiding principles so that the board members can see how, on a go-forward basis, what kind of relations should exist, whether it should continue to have the services receiving from the county or should have its own staff. So that's the discussion that we'll have. We had members from the county executive team, a couple of them that attended the meeting. And at that meeting, they indicated that the county was planning on embarking on a study on its own, whether to take over sewer services for the unincorporated area of the county. After that meeting, the county executive sent an email to the city managers indicating as such, asking for their participation in the meeting. And so I was getting calls from the city folks asking what was the rationale is SASD would not be in service anymore. That is yet to be determined. We don't have the clarity in terms of what the purpose of the study is, but hopefully as we go forward, we'll have a better clarity on it. And also, that is an item that I think we'll have as a standing discussion in the subcommittee so that we will get that feedback as to the purpose of that study and the scope and the timing and so forth. So the subcommittee has a chance to hear those as well. So that concludes my update.
All right, any questions or comments? My understanding is that this study is going to be ongoing. The committee is going to be meeting for the next few months. This will take a little bit of time. I know that Director Kennedy had served on the committee, and the county is, I think, responding to this board's desire to look at different opportunities and just looking for information on what our options are. And so I think we have, over the next few months, some time to work through that and have those conversations at the committee level and bring it back to the board. That's my understanding. Is that correct?
Which I would assume to be the case.
Okay.
On a go-forward basis. Again, there's no set agenda per se, meaning the exact, but this can certainly be brought into the discussion as the subcommittee continues to wade through the issues.
Okay. I don't see anyone signed up for questions, so we'll move on to our next item.
Sacramento, acting as your Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District and Sacramento Area Sewer District, District Separate Matters. Item number 3 is miscellaneous director and district engineer matters.
I just want to make one point, which I did before. Rosemary Clark is essentially serving as assistant district engineer role. I'm asking her to take lead on some of the discussion items, so she's going to do that today, and as appropriate, the rest of the items in the agenda.
Thank you for being here, Rosemary.
Thank you. Okay. So February 12th is our next meeting, and that's a holiday, so we won't be having that meeting. The next meeting we'll be having is February 26th. As update on the Director of Internal Services Department, we have selected a candidate. We'll be bringing that to you on the February 26th board. We are in the process of starting Director of Operations for Regional SAN interviews in early March, and we'll keep you updated on that as it continues.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything else? That's it? Okay, moving on. We do have one request for public comment, but it's in regard to item number 6 under the county regional sanitation. So I do not have any other requests for public comment. And so we will move on to the next item, please, district consent matters. And I believe we were going to we had a request to pull item number 6.
Yes. So acting as your Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District, district consent matters, items 5 through 9, with the exception of item number 6.
Any other requests or comments, or do we have a motion for approval for consent?
I move approval for consent minus item 6.
And second by Director Nottoli. All in favor?
I'm sorry, Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Director Kennedy.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. I thought we had a speaker on one of the items you said?
Yeah, we just pulled it.
Yeah.
We pulled it for the speaker.
Oh, you pulled it later?
We
Okay,
have a speaker.
thank you.
We
Okay, I
are
just wanted to-
pulling
okay.
item 6,
Thank
yes. Any other questions? Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And so we will now move on to item 6.
Item number 6, approve an agreement with New Singular Wireless PCS LLC for a telecommunication facility permit and a wireless telecommunications facility at the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District Northeast plant located at 1000 River Walkway in Carmichael.
Good morning, Chair and board members. I'm Christoph Dobson, Director of Policy and Planning. And this item is for a license for a cell tower on our Northeast plant property, Regional Sands property. It is something that doesn't create any significant operational issues for the district, and it's a small, potential small source of revenue. One of the things about that property is there's the Sheriff's Academy is there. It's a large property. We have some facilities there, but we have a small real interest in the property itself. So, but we have to maintain it. So it would be a nice offsetting revenue source to have that that license. But the bottom line is that it's in the proposed location of the cell tower is in the American River Parkway boundaries, and so it's a sensitive area for the community. And so what we're proposing and recommending is the approval of this license agreement. It allows for an 18-month period where the proponent would have to go through the process and get all of their entitlements. And we think that's kind of the right way to do it from Regional Sands perspective, is to defer to the process that's set up to go through the entitlement process. And then if they don't get it within that time period, then the agreement is terminated. So that allows the process to move forward. It's kind of in a parallel right now. So that's our recommendation.
Okay, do we have any, Supervisor Peters?
Did you have a speaker on this?
We do. Would you
Okay, I'd
like to
hear
move
from
to
the-
that first?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'd like to invite Nick Tagas on behalf of AT&T.
Good morning, board. First off, my condolences and my congratulations to board member Hume for losing his chairmanship, and congratulations and my condolences.
Thank you.
For us
I
for
really
accepting
feel
the
it.
chairmanship. I'll be brief. We concur with the sanitation district statements. We are actively seeking this license so that we can move forward with the entitlement process. Section 4 of the agreement specifically states that if we cannot secure our permits and go through the gauntlet of 7+ public hearings in order to procure the entitlements, that this contract is null and void. The carrier is merely seeking that assurance that once we do go through that process, and if we can successfully navigate that process, that the landlord is providing those rights. Conversely, I would also mention that, the standard process with the county is to require these carriers to secure its lease rights ahead of time with county-owned property prior to going through that entitlement process. And we're merely, AT&T is merely seeking the equal protection or equal deference under that sort of process. And with that, if you have any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
So essentially, you would like the assurance that we're going to go through with the deal. If you move through the process, it still has to go to the board of directors. There's still a lot of
That's
public
right.
work to do. So
CPAC, RPAC, Parks and Rec, Design Review, Planning Commission, and ultimately Board of Supervisors if that's required. So we have a long way to go here. So this isn't the end all be all of this project.
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Director Peters.
Thank you. I just wanted to correct the speaker. It only goes to the Board of Supervisors if the Planning Commission is appealed. So this is really left to, would be left to the Planning Commission to decide. The CPAC for Carmichael voted 5-0 against this proposal. It's kind of an odd way of going about this with this board being asked to vote on whether on this process, and I'm afraid that all the public meetings that the speaker indicated will come in and people will say, well, this seems like the answer's already been given. It's already approved because this board approved it. And we have yet to hear from regional parks. We have yet to have an opinion on the American River Parkway General Plan. We haven't had all the neighborhood meetings. CPAC voted no. And I just found out about this in the last couple of days. And the more I thought about it, I started thinking about it in the context of the American River Parkway, which, in my view, doesn't need any more degradation. It certainly has been through, is going through a very tough time with all the homeless. I'm not trying to compare a cell tower and homeless. I just want to say that the parkway is kind of under attack at the moment. And I'm in favor, as much as the next person, for having better cell phone service wherever we need it. But I personally don't think it's needed at this location, being that it's right on the edge of the parkway. It's on the corner of the regional sand property. Representative from AT&T indicated he thought that the agreement, the contract that's in the staff report allows an alternative location, but I asked planning, Sac County Planning about that, and they did not see anything in the agreement or exhibits to the agreement that highlight an alternative location. So I think this request is premature. At best, I would suggest that it come back after it go through the further down the process with county planning. And that if for some reason this board votes to go ahead with this project, that the applicant doesn't think that the board automatically that the Board of Supervisors will be voting in favor of the project. So it's unusual to have a piece of property in the parkway that's owned by someone other than the county, and for that board to make a decision that affects the whole parkway. So I would move to deny this request.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Director Peters, second by Director Serna.
Can I speak to the...
Yes, I was just going to get to you.
Thank you.
Give me a minute.
No, I just wanted to agree with and emphasize what Director Peters just mentioned. We have 3 of the 5 members of the Board of Supervisors that represent different parts of the American River Parkway. And I concur fully that it is a very stressed county asset right now for a lot of different reasons. And I also want to just underscore the fact that it's very rare that we would have a 5-0 vote by a CPAC and then somehow affirm otherwise an applicant's request. So, and that really speaks to the amount of trust and faith we put in our CPACs. And so I think the applicant really needs to be aware of the value of that.
Thank you. Director Hume.
Thank you, Chair. As the mayor can attest, we've had quite a row with cell phones down in Elk Grove recently and taken into consideration much of the impact to the community, but also some of the need or benefit when that coverage is critical. And so although the Parkway is a stressed asset, as has been mentioned, there are also untoward activities that occasionally occur. And when one of those activities occur, it would be nice to have a signal in order to reach our first responders. And should something occur with respect to a natural disaster, our channels are getting more and more stressed because of the amount of capacity and broadband that's required in the Internet of Things. And so while I'm certainly not going to speak to whether or not the Board of Supervisors should or shouldn't approve this, I think as a sanitation board district director, this is the district saying that this is a good thing from a cash flow perspective for the district. So I would defer to my supervisor colleagues with respect to the process at the county, but I think that this was definitely worth bringing to the board for consideration.
Are you moving to approve it, approve staff's
It's just
recommendation?
a comment.
I am not suggesting a substantive motion. I'll go ahead and let the chair call for the question on the original motion. Thank you.
Okay, Director Nottoli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just say that recognizing obviously some of the kind of upside down process here, and I think certainly it's not inappropriate for staff to bring us from time to time, some of these suggestions and or ideas as might relate to certainly some cash flow to the district.
How much is did he say how much it was?
Oh,
It's $24,000 per year, and with a 3%
Minimum.
inflation.
Yeah. I do think that again, the Parkway obviously is a treasure, and whatever stressors it may have, I know we're committing significant dollars to try to address a number of those issues, and certainly the ongoing maintenance. And I think the activity there, I don't disagree that certainly cell phones are part of, they're basically cemented to people's hands these days, and they obviously serve a very useful purpose. But in my experience, and whether it's been with this district proposal or others, there are many sites. Obviously, the folks that are asked to, on behalf of the carriers, to try to site these, they look for sites where they can get the best coverage and so forth. But I don't know that there's been any particular problem in this area, but there are other locations, and certainly this district, I think, as much as it certainly could potentially utilize some additional dollars, I don't see necessary demerit here. And I guess the one thing that concerns me is that the report here wasn't absent that there's another process, but hearing from my colleague that apparently it's already gone through some plan review. I had no clue, unless somebody would have shared this morning, that already the CPAC, and again, that's a process. I had no idea that. I saw the exempt document for planning environmental review. And so I think for this application or any future one, if there's, current information, we ought to have that available to us. And again, I'm not trying to be critical here, but that's important, because that's important consideration, and certainly that community voice, and certainly, the voice of the supervisor represents the district, but I represent a large stretch of the American River as well, Parkway along the south side of the river. And so I'm going to support the motion here today. And again, I certainly don't discount district staff looking for revenue offsets. This would go to our non-fee, non-revenue fund, and it could be significant over a 30-year period. But I got to believe the process will show that there's probably other locations that may be more suitable and that don't infringe on the Parkway and all the various assets there.
The CPAC information was very recent.
Okay.
So it is after we have prepared the board letters is when it happened. So we just came to know just a few days ago.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Director Peters.
Prabhakar, I would just say, but you knew there was another process, and this is sort of out of pattern. And to Don's comment, I assumed that this had, when I first read it, I thought, has this already been through the planning process at the county? And when I called planning, I was able to find out this information. I do think that would have been important to add in a staff report, that the project has to go through county planning or one of the city's planning department, whatever it is, and recognize for the sanitation district that the American River Parkway is a special asset of all of our jurisdictions and has its own general plan approved by the legislature and all of us, and so there's a lot of sensitivity to that particular thing. So anyway, I don't expect a comment back. I just
Okay.
wanted you to know, I think that should have been, I also think that should have been added.
Okay.
That there is another process it's going through.
Director Hume.
Thank you, Chair. With respect to that, can I ask a clarifying question of the motion? Was the motion to simply table this issue until it works through the county process, or was the motion to disapprove the agreement?
Well, it was to disapprove the agreement.
Which would then
If I could
preclude
ask-
the county
If I could ask
process.
counsel?
Yeah, could I make a suggestion? I would suggest that perhaps you would rather just drop this, so let the county planning process go forward first. Otherwise, this is dead on arrival. So I don't know if you've denied this. I think it probably kills the project without allowing it to go through planning, without giving that any more thought. That's my instinct. So I think if you
I've been weighing that, but recognizing what you say, but on the other hand, when I slept on it overnight, I just thought it's such a problem in the American River Parkway. So I can't predict what the Board of Supervisors would do or the Planning Commission would do when they view the project, but
what I would think what this board would not want to do is interfere with the planning process. So I know,
but sending a signal to AT&T, that's they're spending a lot of money on something that.
But if you simply drop it, if that's an option under your rules, I think.
I can make a comment on that. If you dropped it, basically it's two things that they can do. They can choose to drop it, or they're going to have to take monetary risk to continue the process, and when they're done with it, come back here in the hope that it gets approved here. What they have indicated to us is if it's not approved here, they will not be continuing. Or if it's dropped, they will not be continuing. I mean, they can come in and speak to that, but the non-approval here or dropping for future consideration are essentially same from AT&T's perspective. But that's what we were told, but again, certainly he can do that.
Well, I think if
I think
Sorry.
Director Nottoli was next.
Yeah.
Sorry, and then Harris.
Just to this whole question, because if I heard the representative from AT&T correctly, he said he needed to have a lease in hand in order to go forward in the process, that the county planning requires that. So
I don't know if that's true.
Okay, well, I don't know if it's true or not, but he certainly can address it. But I'm not interested in entering a lease, and if they can't go forward without that, then, to the point Supervisor Peters just made, I get it, you can drop something, but I don't want to send any mixed signals here that somehow you go through the process and spend all the money, and that, that somehow at least this member is going to be persuaded otherwise as a member of this board, or in wearing other hats. That, I think that. And so, again, you can clarify what you said, but I heard what you said, and that's what you did say.
Yeah, if I could make some clarifying statements to this board, I think we all want to just take a step back for a second and have clear heads here. So AT&T is merely seeking equal protection of the rights as all other carriers have been afforded by this board under the Telecommunications Act.
In the American River Parkway?
Under the Telecommunications Act, if a government agency requires all carriers to go through a certain process, and in this case, if the county requires carriers to first get a license or a permit before they go into planning, they're merely seeking that same protection. What we're not saying, though, is we're willing to walk away and stop this project. This is a 2-year project for FirstNet as well as LTE coverage. FirstNet is for our first responders. It's a dedicated network. AT&T has demonstrated twice now their willingness to work with this community and this board. First, the design was to be a stealth tree. It's located in a grove of trees. The planning department said this is not a good design. We immediately changed the design to an antique full water tank, and we're putting a logo called the American River Parkway to demonstrate we want to provide more of a monument to this area. Now, if the board decides to just table this until the planning process goes through, AT&T will accept that. That will allow us to work with the community. However, if this board says under no circumstance will you ever allow a license agreement here, then we can't go here. Now, as to your comment, Supervisor?
Supervisor Nottoli.
Supervisor Nottoli, as to your comment as to the veracity of the area of where this tower can go, there's a very strong and clear propagation map as well as an alternative site analysis. There was only 3 parcels that would allow a cell tower, 2 schools and a sewage treatment plant.
Okay.
And that's why we chose that. So all we're seeking today, if this board decides not to agree to allow this lease to be executed today, then we ask that it be tabled until the planning process goes through.
Okay, I appreciate your response certainly to my earlier comments, but I guess the point that I want to make here is that the matter before us is to your point about issuing some license or permit. And if we say no, we're not interested in doing that, I don't think we're compelled to do that. You may have some other,
Right.
Legal strategy on that, but
No.
we're not compelled to do that. You obviously are seeking to go through another process, but I think the motion that's on the floor, if I understood it correctly, was to basically indicate to our staff that we're not interested, and if that's the choice of this board. And I think that would end the question there. That's not your choice, and that's not what you're advocating for on behalf of your company. But that's the motion, as I understand.
That's correct. We would be seeking a tabling of this until we go through the planning process. Perhaps when we work with the community, there is a potential right now to relocate this on that very large parcel, much farther away from those residential units. And we're working with some of the stakeholders of that community at Sandbar Circle. So we're asking to maybe allow that process to go through. We would have to go back to CPAC if we did change the location of the tower on this very large parcel.
Okay, thank you. Director Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with many of the comments by the supervisors, and of course they're my colleagues, but I don't think this is the venue to debate whether or not a use on the American River Parkway is acceptable or should be denied. So I would like to offer a substitute motion to simply withdraw this item from the agenda for now and let it go through the actual planning process for the American River Parkway, because I think that's the appropriate place to raise all these issues. So that's my motion.
I second that motion.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion? Well, we still have further discussion, so we'll come back to the substitute motion after further discussion. Do you have any comments? You were next. Director Bruins, please.
Well, I was going to make that same recommendation, so I support the substitute motion.
Can I just make one comment? I don't know the answer to this, but I don't know if there is some impediment with the planning process where there must be a lease in place. I just want to indicate, I don't know. I don't know that.
Thank you, Krista.
Okay, Director Peters.
I just wanted to comment to something the speaker mentioned about the location. They did send a photograph of an alternate location, but on the same piece of property that the sewer district owns. It's a little further away from houses, and at first I thought, that's not in your file. That new photograph is not in your file. But then when I got to thinking about the degradation to the parkway last night, I just think that there's probably a better location than, and I also forgot to mention one further committee that it has to go through, and that's the American River Parkway Commission. So I just don't see it surviving that, but I could be wrong. And my feeling is we should send a message to the sewer district and to AT&T that this is not the right place for it. And because not only does the board possibly look at this later, there are a lot of people on this board whose districts include pieces of the American River Parkway.
Okay, Director Serna.
Thank you. So I know we have a few motions here to consider, but there's been much talk about signals back to the applicant. I think it's pretty clear this is not going to be a slam dunk. So I would hope that you might even consider finding a recording of this discussion and share it with your superiors so you understand where we're coming from, whether we're members of the Board of Supervisors that are members of this body or the entire body as a whole. I think you're getting a very clear impression of what our concerns are relative to the parkway and locating this type of use in the parkway. And to that extent, you actually have kind of a very unique ability in what has become a fairly disjointed planning sequence of events or planning process. So perhaps taking that back, revising whatever it is that you think you need, understanding sensitivities to the parkway may actually help you. So I just want to offer that.
Director Nottoli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, again, we're not debating the merits of the project as much today as maybe in some other venue, but there's a lot of places to site cell towers, And I guess I find it a little bit amazing that in order to propagate, you find 2 school sites in American River Parkway. And I'm not, as a member of this board and certainly a member of the board, I'm not interested in propagating cell towers in the American River Parkway. There are a lot of places, there are transportation corridors, there are commercial areas, industrial areas. It's not easy to site, and certainly there are federal and state rules that intervene on behalf of local governments already, telling us what we have to do. But I think we can make choices, and certainly the Sanitation District in maintaining its property there, Riverwalk, working with the Sheriff's Department and other community uses there. I think it's low level, it's an appropriate use, it's adjacent to neighborhoods. That parkway is a treasure, and I don't think we need to start here, now, or any time in putting cell towers in that American River Parkway. And again, it doesn't deny the fact that those are very critical to people's daily lives and in public uses, and certainly in critical incidents. But I guess I just find it difficult to believe that the only 3 places you could find a tower site would be on 2 schools in American River Parkway. And I'm not interested in doing the Parkway, and frankly, I don't support the motion to defer on this. I think we ought to say no, and just say no emphatically this morning and get on with business. Thanks.
Okay, we do not have any further comments. I want to make a couple comments. I just want to say that I'm very sensitive to protecting the American River Parkway, and I'm also very sensitive to the fact that the CPAC voted 5-0. I think it's really important that we listen to our communities, and out of respect for Supervisor Peters in her district, I would hope she would have that same consideration for me for something in my district. At the same time, I love revenues and I love opportunities to make money. In fact, I was a business that had a cell tower and made money from the cell towers on top of my roof. And it was a wonderful opportunity for me. I could support tabling this and letting you go through the process to see if you could find an opportunity that maybe the community could be comfortable with. But I can tell you that at the end of the day, as Supervisor Serna said, it doesn't look like it's going to be an easy path. This is a little bit out of order, so now we have a comment from Director Harris.
So just briefly, I also represent a large stretch of the Lower American River Parkway, and while this is not a use that I would welcome in that stretch of the parkway, I still don't think that this is the place to debate appropriate uses. I think that the community deserves the chance to weigh in on this and to be made aware of it and let it go through the mill. If this is a project that the community would accept, then we'll see where that goes. Very likely it would come back to the Board of Directors. If my substitute motion fails, I would say that I would support Ms. Peters' motion.
Okay, Director Serna.
Yeah, I just want to speak to that because I think I agree with Director Harris. It's important to hear from the community. That's exactly what CPACs do. That's what CPACs are there for, is to facilitate hearing from the community. So we've heard from the community, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, we do not have any other comments before the board, and so we have a substitute motion to table this and let the process play out with the public by Director Harris and seconded by Director Hume. All in favor?
Does table mean drop?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Okay, I believe table means we're dropping this and letting them continue to work through the process. Is that correct?
That's how yes.
Withdrawing it from for now and letting it
Drop, I think, is drop.
drop. We have a motion to drop. Thank you.
Madam Chair, is it okay if the roll call vote is
Yes, please, a roll call vote.
Director Bruins?
Aye.
Carr? Frost?
Aye.
Harris?
Aye.
Aquino?
Aye.
Kennedy?
No.
Lee?
Aye.
McGarvey?
No.
Nottoli?
No.
Orozco? Peters?
No.
Serna?
No.
And Mr. Hume?
Aye, but I'm glad it's not my money to continue spending to go through the process.
And the motion fails with 5 noes.
Did you copy
Okay,
Vegas?
so that brings us to the original.
Sorry. Oh, Director Villegas, I'm so sorry. Yes. Okay. And that means the motion does pass. Oh, actually, it still does fail. I'm sorry, because there's still 5 noes. So 5 noes means the motion fails.
I don't think she.
Okay, motion.
I don't know if 5 noes doesn't fail because we have 12 members here. 13.
13. And that means that 5 of them have, 9 of them have to vote
So
yes.
I saw ayes from Director Villegas,
You need a
Director Lee, Director
There's only
Aquino.
8. Oh, 8 yeses only. So,
5, 6, 7, 8.
no, 9 members is the
8
majority.
S's and 5 noes.
Does it have to have a?
Does it have to be
A supermajority?
2/3 vote?
No, a 2/3 would be 12 members.
Do we need
It's not
2/3
2/3.
There's only 8 members that.
Is it
Yeah,
of
but
the members present?
A simple
would be
majority.
7.
Is this a simple majority carries?
That's correct.
So how many?
It's okay.
We have 13.
13. So a majority is going to be, if we have 7, it passes.
So motion carries?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. So motion carries, and that settles that.
But you got the message.
You have a long road ahead, but wishing you well in your search for a location for the cell site.
Thank you, and may I add one last thing for Director Serna? If we do move this location, even on this property, it will go back to CPAC. So I'm hopeful that we can work with the community and show a tremendous amount of working with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to repeat again, I think that our staff really missed the ball here by encouraging an application on the American River Parkway. It's precedent setting, it degrades the parkway, and it's, if you'd put it on regional sand property out in, where the plant is or something, maybe something different. Oh yeah, that's Elk Grove, I shouldn't have said that. I think that ought to be taken into account when you start talking to companies about cell phone towers on property that the Sand District owns.
Director Villegas.
I don't have a microphone that's working, but I just think this sort of underscores the importance as a practical matter when we have these items, because of the size of this board, the breadth and the jurisdiction of this board, that to Director Susan's comments, the local body, the local jurisdiction needs to be considered before we take on these kinds of issues, because just as we discussed the importance of the American River Parkway, there may be just as important other areas within our respective jurisdictions.
That's a better way of saying it.
Yeah, and I think that's an important element to feed into. It may not be the overriding consideration, but it needs to be considered on the front end so that we come fully equipped to be respectful of what's important to our respective jurisdictions, because I don't know what's important to different jurisdictions, and I certainly want to have that information before I'm asked to consider it. So to your point, I think it's something we ought to embed as part of our practice going forward.
Thank you.
We're still having a little question about quorum, so I'm sorry.
Okay, and I wonder if somebody can come fix his microphone. Director Serna.
Thank you. So I appreciate the comments made by Director Peters and Director Villegas about this. And it does kind of boggle my mind that given the media coverage on the American River Parkway, given the fact that even this board has had ample discussion about the sensitivities on the parkway, this board has also had discussions about how to find resources that are under the control of this body to assist in the county's and the city's efforts to improve the parkway. That we did receive this in the fashion that we did, and not that I'm interested in making a lot of unnecessary work for anyone, but if that signal isn't going to be institutionalized for staff, that there is, when it comes to the parkway, anything dealing with the parkway, it's a different conversation, right? So if that's not going to sink in, or if it's not taken as intended by some of the comments that have been issued thus far about the parkway, then perhaps we have to have a discussion later about institutionalizing that in terms of our policies when it comes to anything that is under the control of regional sand that has to do with the parkway or adjacencies to the parkway.
We got the message, certainly.
Thank you. Good discussion. Okay, at this time, let's move on to Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District Separate Matters, item number 10.
The Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District recommends that your board receive and file the quarterly report on the Echo Water project.
In the interest of time, I'm asking Vic to sort of quick lip reading so that we can be done with it.
I will attempt to go faster. Right, I'm Vic Giotani. I'm the program manager for the Echo Water project. I'd like to provide some updates from the quarterly report that ended December 31st, 2019. So this is a summary of the program schedule. The bars in green are planning and design phase. The blue bars and purple are construction and commissioning. And you can see we currently have only about 4 or 5 projects in construction, and we are quickly finishing up several of the smaller projects. The 2 remaining large projects, the biological nutrient removal and the tertiary treatment facility projects, are still ongoing in construction. Looking out a little bit into the future, you'll see several other projects that are noted. One of those has started planning in the planning phase, and that's the what we call the CO tank conversion project. That's one of the existing biological processes that will be decommissioned after the BNR project is started up. And that project will be used to shave peak diurnal flows, which enhances the BNR process operations. So this graphic just shows some of the interrelationships of a few of the projects to the larger projects. You can see there are the 3 projects tied to the BNR project, and those projects are on schedule to be completed well in time to not impact the BNR project. There are currently no projects tied to the TTF project, so that project is kind of free on its own. This is a graphic of the program cash flow. The bars that are dark are the are actual expenditures, and the light bars are projected expenditures. So you can see coming up in early 2020, there's a ramp up of cost expenditures planned, and those are due to the tertiary treatment facility project ramping up their construction efforts. So this graphic shows actual versus projected cash flows. The orange bar are the projected cash flows, and green bars are actual expenditures. You can see we're tracking very closely now with what our planned expenditures are, and we're still below our projected expenditures, which means that we are still under budget. So just a few program updates. We've logged over 3 million labor hours on the program, and we've suffered 17 lost time injuries. Over 99% of the concrete has been placed for the BNR project, and I'll show some photos about for the BNR project a little bit later in this presentation. Heavy work in the electrical and instrumentation side, connecting up all the power to equipment and communication systems. Tertiary treatment facility projects, they're placing concrete on all the major structures. Nitrifying side stream treatment project, that's in operation, but we still have to go through reliability testing, but it is operating and process is functioning well. The effluent system reliability project was completed last October, and the return activated sludge pumping project was completed at the end of December. This is an aerial of the plant site back in December. You can see all the construction activities going on in both the north and south side of the plant. The effluent system reliability project I mentioned, we've completed that project mid-late October of last year. That project replaced a number of large valves on our effluent system, and by replacing those valves, it allows us to shut down our effluent system, isolate it so there's no leakage, so that we can make tie-ins, especially for the TTF project that's coming up. So that project had 23 full plant diversions over 2 summers, and due to our operators, you know, when we say full plant diversion, flow was coming in, but there was no flow going out. And so our biological process kind of became stagnant for up to 2 days. And bringing that plant back online was no easy feat for our operators, and they did so in a manner that we suffered no discharge permit violations, so it was a great accomplishment. And on top of that, we only had one odor complaint, so we were storing primary effluent in our storage basins, and we were able to control that with only one odor complaint. Due to the risk of this project, it was issued as a guaranteed maximum price contract. The guaranteed max price was $5.8 million. The contract was structured to track all of the cost, and then there was a shared 50-50 savings on anything below the guaranteed max price. Final contract cost was $4.4 million, so our share of the savings was almost $700,000. Very successful project. A little bit about the progress of the plant, a bunch of photos coming up. This is the biological nutrient removal project. These are all the basins, the 8 basins, and you can see I mentioned most of the concrete is placed. There's one section that is not placed, and that's a piece of deck over a big equipment gallery, and they're using that hole to lower equipment and materials into the galleries like piping and some small equipment. So this photo shows the first 3 basins, and if you look closely, you can see in those basins a bunch of small lines running across, along the basin and across, and those are aeration headers. And those are in construction, those are needed to get oxygen into the process. This photo shows the primary effluent pump station. You can see the extension of the primary effluent channel coming from the left here, going into the pump station. There's 4 600 horsepower pumps that are installed, and they're looking at starting commissioning activities on those in the coming next 2 to 3 months. In the foreground, there's a large odor control facility that will take foul air from the biological nutrient removal process and treat those. It's just a photo of some work up on the deck. They're kind of doing some finishing touches on top of the deck. And I mentioned heavy focus on the electrical and instrumentation side. There are just tens of thousands of wires that need to be landed into the correct locations for communications and power. This is a aerial of the tertiary treatment facilities project. You can see that it's shoehorned in very tightly between existing facilities. They are placing concrete as fast as they can. This is a close-up. This is the disinfection contact basin. You can see them working their way out with slabs and wall construction. And off to the right, again, you can see that's our disinfection chemical storage facility that feeds our disinfection and dechlorination process. A little close-up of some of the walls and slab construction. This is one of 2 electrical substations on the TTF project. CMU walls are going up. This is a photo of the completed nitrifying side stream treatment process that's in operation. This is a photo of the channel air blower, the east blower room. This is a brand new blower room that will provide air into some of the process channels going between the RAS project and the BNR project. Just a few more. They've actually paved that site on the channel air blower project. That project is in commissioning. We expect that project to be done within about 2 to 3 months. And I mentioned a completed return activated sludge project. So some of the upcoming major activities for this spring, I mentioned completing the channel air blower project, complete reliability testing on the nitrifying side stream treatment project. We actually have got the flow equalization projects. One of the earlier projects that we had started still is working on an automated washdown system. Contractor had some issues with his sub providing those systems, but he's taken over those contracts, and we're getting the rest of that system tested out for installation this summer. We want to close out our RAS project. We'll probably be bringing final acceptance approval to this board sometime in the next 3 to 4 months. Continue TTF concrete placement through the summer. Should be a big ramp up through the summer. And then for the BNR project, complete aeration piping, get more commissioning. They're energizing electrical buildings. We're really pushing to get some of our biological seeding started somewhere in October of this year. With that, we have any questions?
Director McGarvey.
Yeah, I'm just, when we went through that tour, it gave the real dimensions of how big this thing really is. Looking at the slides you had, that was very good, but being able to go through it and see how huge some of those things are and the amount of work that's been put into it, my hat's off to everyone working on that, because it's such an unbelievable amount of work that's been completed, and seeing even more now that's been done since we were there. So, very good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Bruins.
Thank you for the update. Looking back at the slide where program costs projected versus actual, seeing that the actual costs are actually catching up to the projected, is it safe to say that some of the concerns we had in the past about the contractors not doing timely work has been satisfied, that they are catching up to where they ought to be?
They are expending, yes, so the construction is moving forward, which means,
Right.
you know, they are spending the money.
As
Right.
we need it to be to meet our permit deadline.
Yes, so, I mean, what we see is, I had talked about potential schedule slippage, and we're still seeing some of that, but it's still not real clear, how much or if, that slippage is going to occur. So this coming up through this year, we'll have a really good idea of where we're going to end up with that project.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Acting as your Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District, separate matters. Item number 11, the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District recommends that your board receive an update on the Sacramento Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant Biosolids Management Plan.
Could you cue the presentation for item 11? Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Steve Nabozic, and I'm here today to give you a brief overview of our biosolids management program. Last year, your board requested that we come back and seek feedback prior to exploring long-term options for our recycling efforts, with the acknowledgement that the Synagro contract's going to expire in 2025, and that's what I'm here to do today. So I'm going to start by providing a brief overview of our current solids handling, then discuss the biosolids management plan, and finally I'll dive into the topic of recycling and our next anticipated steps. And of course, your comments and feedback are welcome at any point in the presentation. So our solids processing consists of solids removal, thickening, treatment, storage, and disposal. Wastewater comes into the plant and solids are separated out in the primary and secondary treatment process that's shown in the blue and the green boxes on the screen. The sludge that's removed is sent to our solids processing area where it's thickened and mixed prior to being treated in our digesters. That's depicted on the red box on the screen. After digestion, we have about 30% of our biosolids are sent to the recycling facility that we partner with Synagro on. That's shown by the left arrow on the screen. And the remainder of our biosolids are sent out to our solid storage basins, or our SSBs, where they're stabilized and stored prior, that's the yellow boxes, and that's prior to final disposal on our dedicated land disposal units, or our DLDs. So without any additional treatment, our digested sludge, or the material that's coming out of our digesters, is a Class B biosolids project. Class B biosolids have low levels of pathogens, and there are a number of restrictions on their final use. We send a stream of this quality biosolids to the recycling facility where it undergoes dewatering and then additional treatment to remove all the pathogens. And what we're left with as a result of that partnership with our partnership with Synagro is about 7,300 dry tons of a Class A product on an annual basis. That product goes to local farmers and is used on food crops locally. And by doing this, we're able to offset commercial fertilizer use. But it comes at a cost. It's about $800 a dry ton. The remainder of our biosolids are disposed on site as a Class B product without any additional processing. And because of that, the cost is substantially less, or about $150 a dry ton. So really the take-home point of this and our current program is our digested sludge is a very wet material. It only is about 2% solids. And any Class A type of product the one that we create now or might consider doing in the future requires additional dewatering, additional treatment, and that's always going to increase the cost substantially compared to our on-site disposal method. So we have a lot of planning that goes into our biosolids, or into our solids program. Our biosolids management plan was last updated in 2015, and that plan evaluates solids needs over a 50-year horizon. It includes projections for growth, new eco water processes, and operation of the recycling facility until 2025. And all that work goes into helping us identify future capital project needs. This slide shows the solids capital projects that we need to implement over the next 10 years to ensure adequate capacity. We currently have a gravity belt thickener under construction, and we have another one that's in design. And we just completed lining another DLD, so this summer we'll have 4 available when it comes time for harvesting. There's also additional digesters and SSBs that are anticipated in 2026. So some considerations going forward regarding the biosolids recycling facility. We can let our contract with Synagro expire in 2025. We can extend the agreement. We can take over operation of the facility, or we could repurpose the facility.
Excuse me, Steve.
Yes.
Director Nottoli had a question. When you're done.
What we want to do now is definitely explore newer technologies, focusing on those that have the most efficient operations. And we want to strike a balance with cost and the environmental benefit of a future project, because there are significant resources for polymers, electricity, and off-site hauling associated with the Class A product. So with input from today's discussion, our next anticipated steps are to issue a request for a proposal for assistance in evaluating future recycling options, conduct the study, update the biosolids management plan, and then bring those results and a recommendation back to your board in 2021.
Okay. Director Nottoli.
Yes. Thanks, Steve, for your presentation. A couple of things that in your calculation as it relates to the costs, there are some, sunk costs. Obviously, on the DLDs, there's land costs. Obviously, you do the initial installations. And so what factors? Is everything factored into that $150 a ton relative to long-term, obviously initial capital? Then there's going to be some point in time, you can build those as strong and durable as you desire. But I can imagine where some point in time the DLDs have to be because you have to go in there and look at their floors and so forth. And
yeah, that cost considers our long-term projections. They've gone up. Our on-site disposal method 10 years ago was probably on the order of $100, $125, but as we continue to construct DLDs and other items to support that disposal method, those costs are adjusted and they are all-inclusive.
Okay, so the 150 that you're quoting, that it has taken all those factors into account, or you're saying that probably needs some additional adjustment?
They take in all the factors that are in the updated 2015 biosolids management plan.
Okay.
So yes.
So the 150 is a solid number.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Just if you're seeking direction, I imagine other members of this board have visited the facility out there, and I know that at the time we made a decision about a Class A product. We looked at the Class B product, and the low-level pathogens or not, they're still pathogens, but the idea was to make this available for food crops, as you just stated. And I think that certainly there are costs to doing that, to making that product, where it can actually be applied for production of food that's consumed by people. What is it, though, that you're seeking today, then? Direction? Because, again, I would just say, for one, as one board member who certainly has tracked this over time, that, I see the value in having a Class A product. Obviously, we've had the backup, and I know I've certainly compliment Ruben and others on the staff who've worked with this for a long time, of having the balance, so the event that there was a contractual issue or other shutdown with the facility, that we always had the dedicated land dedication. But I have no problem exploring other alternatives. But I guess one thing I would want to say is that I would not want to see us use a Class B material. I think the Class A, it has costs associated with it, but we generate power and energy out there, and we have other revenue streams. We talked about another one earlier this morning on another item. So we have other revenue streams to offset. And I just think that, we're environmentally conscious. We've done a lot with our water quality, with the quality of life here in this community, and certainly with the byproducts. And again, I compliment our staff and certainly leadership there. And to me, this may be under-recognized as it relates to what's being done in the industry or certainly in this community, because there are costs associated with it. But, when we take a full 1/3 of all the solids that are ultimately retrieved out of that plant and turn them into a product, and I won't say a byproduct, but a product that then can be reused, that has offsets, because other chemical fertilizers then don't have to be utilized. They come from petroleum products and other types of production using other chemicals and so forth. This is, this to me makes good sense. And I think that, we ought to, stand tall as we have, and, and again, recognizing we need to, show the cost and have a balance. But again, I'm very supportive. Now, whether you do this current operator, or there are others in the industry, and maybe there are other, more energy efficient ways to get to this final product. But I for one, believe we need to continue to be a pace setter and to stand up tall for our community. And actually, when we tout ourselves in this region, rightfully so, farm to fork and all the agricultural production, local farmers and so forth, the fact that we generate a product from waste and make it into something that actually helps grow food to put on people's tables and so forth, that to me that's a real strong message. And I think it connects what we try to do in water, air, and with solids as well.
With this today, let me address a couple of things. First, we're not asking for any approvals here. It's the discussion of where we're going in the future, and then have your feedback along the way. You're right, when back roughly 20 years ago, when this board made the decision to bring Synagro, it was fully aware of the cost. It's brought in because of the sustainability ethic that the board had and will continue to have. So the thing that we're going to go on a go-forward basis, there are additional technologies that came into the picture that are potentially much cheaper than what we have today. But those will all be explored and brought back with the same discussion in terms of what the balance that we need to have. How much are we willing to? We could take 100% we want to recycle, to let the DLD basins essentially mothballed, or go to 100 this way, or somewhere in between. So we'll bring the alternatives, number one, technologies-wise, and two, the cost-wise, so this board can make a decision somewhere around 2024, 2025 is when our current agreement will expire. So we need to be in a position to make those calls ahead of time. And that's the purpose, just to give you a highlight of where we're heading, what we're going to be studying over the next year or so. And Fairfield Sassoon, for example, uses a different technology. And that's roughly about $330 a dry ton that produces Class A product. It's a liquid product. But again, we got to look at the market and whether the market exists for us to be able to use all of those will be brought back.
And if I could, just real quickly, but that was one of the things with Synagro, because they took on the marketing arm. That was part of what was built into, obviously, the cost, that they were the ones that, they received material, processed it. Obviously, there's a cost associated to the district, but then they were responsible making sure that they had farm contracts or other users to accept that, and the district wasn't responsible for that part of it. So,
absolutely right.
Yeah. I guess lastly, I would say, Madam Chair, that I'm supportive of us maintaining as a part of our portfolio doing Class A product, and I think, again, it sets a good high environmental standard, and bringing those recommendations back to this board makes sense. So
we'll be coming back in 2021 with further technologies and costs, and then at that time we can make the direction.
A couple quick comments. Director Nottoli, you're absolutely right. Your board was the leader in California on biosolids recycling. This was the first pellet facility in the state of California, and your board led that direction. So at the time, in 2002, this board approved this agreement, and you felt it was the right balance between recycling, 25 to 30%, and the on-site disposal. So this, going forward, we're going to bring on that consultant to look at this technology as well as others for Class A. One opportunity for the BRF, biosolids recycling facilities, we're looking at maybe using our methane in a different way. And right now, for the BRF, we have to buy through the contract natural gas for the drying. So there may be opportunities to use our methane on this dryer or a different technology. So we agree with your comments.
Yeah, great. Director Hume.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with the comments of Director Nottoli, but I just want to, so that when this comes back, make sure I understand fully what we're discussing here. When you mentioned the $800 per ton cost for the Class A material, that's cost to the district to produce that material?
That's cost to the district through the contractual arrangement with Synagro for our front end processing and the contractual arrangement with Synagro on the back end. So once it covers the, our thickening, our digestion of the solids, as well as then sending it to Synagro, having them process it to a Class A product, and then get it off site.
So essentially, we're paying Synagro to take our product and turn it into a commercially viable product? Let me jump in. So this board approved the design, build, own, operate agreement in 2002 for Synagro to plan, design, construct, and operate for 20 years this facility. This facility became fully operational in 2005 and is a 20-year agreement through 2025. And so that $800 per dry ton cost is everything, including the planning, the design, the construction, the operation, the electricity, the natural gas, all in for 20 years. In year 19, the agreement calls for a third-party auditor to come in and review the condition of that facility, the BRF, to see if it's an appropriate condition for its age, because at year 20, it turns over to district ownership at the cost of $1. We want to make sure at that time we receive a reasonably good facility. So that auditor will come in, make his or her findings, and either say, Synagro, you've got to make the following repairs, or Synagro, you've got to compensate the district for those repairs. So we will own that facility at year 20, after 20 years in 2025. So to your question, Director Hume, yes, that $800 is all in, but from the time they receive the digested solids from us until they take that pellet to a farm in South Sacramento County. Okay, thank you.
Will that be renegotiated in year 20? Will they continue?
So this is one of the things we're going to have to come back to your board for direction, because right now, the way it stands, at year 19, we bring in the auditor, and as it stands, that agreement terminates in 2025, unless your board takes other direction. You could say extend the agreement. You could say, based on this consultant review, we should go to a different technology. You could say district operation, or just let it terminate.
Okay. I have no further comments or questions. Thank you very much, Steve. That's very exciting.
Thank you.
Next item, moving forward as Sacramento Area Sewer District, District Consent Matters, items 12 through 15. Okay, we have a motion by Director Peters, a second by Director Kennedy, and all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And I just wanted to make sure we were good to go on item 6.
Yes, we have scrambled a little bit because I don't have access to bylaws or rules of procedure for this agency, and I'm frantically texting Lisa to see where they are. But Robert's rule says that a motion passes with a majority of members present, which is how we handled it. I believe from talking to Prabhakar and Lisa, texting Lisa, that that's the rules under which this board has operated. So I will obviously go back to my office and see if I can find something more definitive, but that's the best I can do for now. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Okay, and I see no comments or questions or communications, questions on communications for receive and file. So with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Some of it, not all of it.